You're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5 as always. Huge weekend for Mayo football fans travelling to Dublin for the big game against Dublin tomorrow, the All-Ireland football quarterfinals. Four-time All-Star, former Mayo defender Colm Boyle is on the line. Colm, how are you?
John, how are you?
Great, Colm. I'm the dub in this conversation, by the way. Now, the hype in the atmosphere in Mayo after beating Kerry, beating Galway, and on the road to meet the Dubs again after, 10 meetings in 11 years?
Yeah, into the Lions Den of Croke Park tomorrow. I definitely said there's a bit of excitement. There hasn't been much talk during the summer. I think the whole format, the way it's been very strange. Even a lot of people not going to games, but I think certainly anyone that was in Salthill last Sunday, and even people that were watching the game, winning that game against Galway, it's given people a bit of a bounce now for sure. And I think once that draw is made on Monday morning and it's Dublin, then yeah, people are really, really excited because you've mentioned there the games that's been played here over the last, we're probably going back to 2012, some unbelievable games and memories in that. So I think people are looking forward to this. Granted, it's probably at an earlier stage than what we're used to. Usually we're used to kind of semi-finals, final. I would say this is probably the first ever quarter-final meeting, but it's still really, really exciting.
There's a lot of management for Kevin McStay and for Dessie Farrell, Cullen. There's strength and conditioning, there's recovery, there's people having jobs. It's an amateur sport still. We need to remember that. All of these rhythms, and no wonder sometimes that there's a degree of inconsistency building in when you don't have maybe sometimes the space to breathe.
Yeah, there is. And it's kind of funny. I was thinking about it earlier on, like Dublin, I know Dublin haven't really been tested in this championship, and a lot of people are saying that might be a weakness for them. But considering the amount of football them boys have played over the years, they've somehow still managed to cruise really to a quarter-final stage. And I think Dessie Farrell would be generally happy with that. I don't think he needs James McCarthy, Mick Fitzsimons, these boys been really put to the pin of their collars in May. I think he's happy. They're where they need to be. They're at the jeopardy stage of the championship at the quarterfinal. So I think he'd be really happy that now he'd be looking for them boys to really kick into action. I think for Mayo it's been slightly different. Obviously they Kerry first round, or sorry, they were beaten by Roscommon first round of the championship, which was a huge downer from a Mayo point of view. Then they've the weird scenario where you have to wait 6 weeks then to your next game. And I know they took like 2 weeks off in that time. A couple of boys went on holidays, started back training again, and then you get the All-Ireland champions in Killarney, and they've been playing, I think, 4 out of the last 5 weekends, so we're hoping that's not going to take its toll on the group of players. So as you said, there are an awful lot to manage between work commitments, even on Monday mornings, not knowing by maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon, the last 2 weekends, who you're playing or where you're playing, what day you're playing at the weekend. So all that takes its toll, of course, yeah.
When you were a player, how did you manage all that, Colm?
Yeah, like probably the closest thing I came to was 2017. We went through the qualifiers a few years, but we had a couple of mad years there where I think 17 in particular, we were playing an awful lot of games in a short period. I think we played 8 or 9 games, maybe 9 games to get to the All-Ireland final, which was an awful lot in that format because there was replays and everything included. So you're just trying to manage your time the best you can. I think the main thing is really you're just trying to manage yourself, get yourself right as best as possible, get yourself in the right frame of mind, and just control what you can really. I think that's the thing. And obviously, the bigger the games, the more pressure that's coming, and the more people want to talk to you about football, and you're probably trying to avoid that as well. So there's all these things going on in the background.
How are you able to switch off?
I wasn't great at switching off, John. I'll be honest. It was 24/7. Overthought things probably far too much. Even driving in the car, you'd just be thinking about, what you need to do to get right for training tomorrow, what you need to get right for the weekend, who you're picking up at the weekend. You're thinking about them and their little movements. You know what I mean? It's just amazing how you can just get completely sucked into it. And yes, it is really important. And if I was advising anyone now, I'd be saying you need to find something where you do get time to switch off. And obviously, spending a bit of time with your family, and obviously my wife as well, that helps greatly. But at the same time, it's always there in the back of your mind, you know what I mean? The focus, and what's coming, and the pressure. And I think I used to always find on game week, it was always from about Thursday onwards. That's where I knew there was something coming. The butterflies were almost coming in the stomach then around Thursday, certainly by Friday morning. And you knew, your body just physically knew that something big was happening at the weekend.
Did it affect your mood, Colm?
Oh yeah, absolutely. As funnily, I was actually chatting to my wife about this yesterday, and she used to always say, "Come game week, I would be very, very quiet around the house." You know, that literally, I wouldn't be saying much at all. There'd be no conversations. I'd probably be some people when they get nervous, they're probably full of chat. I'm probably the opposite. I wouldn't be chatting at all, and I'd just be so kind of mentally focusing on what's ahead and thinking of the smaller details maybe. And yeah, it's actually funny because my wife did say this to me yesterday, that you were just completely zoned out of everything else you were doing, and it was just it was hard to get a word out of me.
It sounds such like a professional athlete, which effectively you were, Colm, for all those years with Mayo in an amateur game, as it's labelled. You went on an incredible journey with so many great Mayo players, Andy Moore and Alan Dillon, all these players, Lee Keegan, I'll just name a few of them. So if you're talking about being so immersed in this, I wouldn't want to put words in your mouth and say obsessed, but if you're dealing with then an All-Ireland final defeat, I mean, like, where were you then for the next week or two after that?
Look, obsessed is, it's a fair word, I would say, because you are obsessed at the time. When you're there and physically in it, you feel like there's nothing else bigger in the world happening at that stage. And I know it's probably a wrong way to be looking at things, or even talking about things, but when you're in the bubble, that's how you feel. And you're right. Then when you have that defeat, like a defeat. After a defeat, usually you're with your teammates for 2 or 3 days. You know what I mean? And different things. You obviously go out. You have after match functions. You stay together for a couple of days after defeats. Then when you leave that surroundings and you're away then on maybe the Tuesday or the Wednesday or whatever it is, and you go back to, I suppose, what you call normal life, and it really, really kicks in. That's when it's tough. That's when your head has gone into overdrive and you're thinking about all the small details. And I suppose the thing with us was, and why we probably recovered fairly well, is because we were a really good group, I think, number one. And number two, we always felt like we weren't far away, that we just needed to keep going, keep pushing, and see, could we, obviously Dublin were the main obstacle in your way. We knew on any given day that, we were as good or if not better than everything else that was out there. But obviously Dublin were the ones, and we just knew that we had to try and keep going back to see, could we push them boys to the pin of their collar.
I've been through bad grief. We've all been through grief. I'd expect you've been through grief as well, Colm. It just feels, from a sporting perspective, from a sporting context, it feels like mild grief you're almost describing there.
Yeah, it is. No, it's like I said, yeah, it's really, really important to put it into context of what
Yes.
But at the time, it does feel like grief, and it does feel like you have something emotionally that you physically need to get over. And like some teams probably don't get over it after big defeats, or some players don't get over, especially if you had a couple. So, but I go back to it again, John. We had a really good group of boys, and we were a group of lads that got on really well together as well. And I think all that helps. It's funny, by the time you're a month away from it, you're almost mad to get back into it again, and mad to get back training, and mad to just be around the boys again and back in the dressing room. So I certainly think that kind of environment that was definitely created by management teams we had over the years, that certainly helps in that regards, and obviously the hunger and the will to go again. But let's be honest, John, they're magical occasions to be involved in too. I know for us, obviously, we never won a final, but when you're involved in so many brilliant days leading up to a final, and then the final itself, it's a magical thing. Like if you're telling me as a young fella that you're going to play in so many Ireland finals, I probably wouldn't have believed you. So you have to take that in consideration as well, and be aware of what you're doing is actually pretty special as well.
Is it fair to say that in 2017 Mayo could not have played as well as they did, and it just was a breaking ball and a free from Dean Rock, and it could have gone so much the other way? You couldn't have left anything else out there. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, but like we played. Is that the best game of football we ever played as a team in my time at Mayo? It probably was, to be honest with you. Did we make mistakes? Yeah, we did. Dublin made mistakes as well. In every game Dublin won, they definitely made mistakes as well. If I look back to the early part of that game, Conor Callan's goal, I probably could have defended that better. Different stages of the game, obviously there was sending offs at bad timing for us. Just different things maybe we could have done different when Lee puts us 2 up, with 10 minutes to go. So of course, as well as we played, there's always that bit more you can do. And I suppose that's the regrets that you would have, that, yeah, okay, we played some sensational football that day, as did Dublin. It was probably the best game of football quality-wise I was ever involved in. There's always more you can do, John. That's the thing. We pushed ourselves hard, but when you're looking for inches, maybe we just didn't find the extra one that was needed at the crucial times.
What did the Dublin jersey then do to you? Were you able to separate the defeats and the players that you were coming up against, or did they get to do your head in at some stage? Were you able to just park what the Dubs were?
It was difficult because when you're striving for something, I suppose, like in All-Ireland, and you've got one team especially that's taken it away from you on a regular basis, then naturally emotions are going to build up against that team. And did we become obsessed with them? Maybe obsessed is a big word to use, but we knew they were the team, as everyone did, that you were going to have to beat if you're going to win the All-Ireland realistically. So yeah, look, it was strange, but it was an unbelievable rivalry, and it led to a lot of tensions on the pitch, as you can obviously tell, John, from watching the games. There was so much going on, and it just felt like at any stage something could just ignite, a row, or someone might be on the edge of getting sent off, and there was so much happening. I'd say they were a nightmare for referees really to officiate, but they were unbelievable games too at the same time, and my feelings towards Dublin at the time were, Jesus, you just felt like you were completely against them. You just felt, I know this is a strong context, or it's a term that's used an awful lot in sport. You feel like you're going to war. I know that's used an awful lot, but you absolutely did feel that in them games, because if you didn't take Dublin on physically, you absolutely had no chance. So that's something that we certainly felt like we had to do.
We saw the respect that Lee Keegan and Derek Connolly had for each other. They're even speaking about it during the week. Colm, did you have a similar buddy, as it were, in the Dublin team that you had the battles with? That was singular.
God, yeah, the two boys are best buds now. I don't know what's after happening here, but no, I wouldn't say that I do. I just never had relationships like that built up over the years, but certainly a mutual respect. And I've mentioned this as well, that when I retired, got a couple of texts off Dublin boys, and vice versa, as well. So there is absolutely that mutual respect there. And now looking back as an ex-player, you can only admire what them boys achieved. You know what I mean? It was sensational. I'll never be repeated. Absolutely, I can't see it ever been repeated again. I think that's something to recognise again.
We must have seen a bit of a war atmosphere at halftime in Salt Hill last week from Kevin McStay, Stephen Rochford, and everybody else. There won't be any lack of motivation in that Mayo dressing room on Sunday.
No, for sure. It's funny you mentioned that, because Kevin McStay mentioned his interview after the game how he was very happy with the way the first half went, that they were only 5 points down, and Jim O'Connor said the complete opposite, that they were fuming at half time, the Mayo players. And I think they were fuming at half time because they felt like they were being outfought by Galway. And you could see, once they brought that fight to Galway in the second half, the difference that makes. The Mayo are a different team when they play like that. There's no doubt about John, Mayo are going to have to be an awful lot better tomorrow. They're going to have to be an awful lot better if they play like they have been playing so far in this championship. Take the Kerry game aside, I think that game can be taken a small bit with a pinch of salt, because I think Kerry are just so far off it. The rest of the games Mayo have played, they've been very, very inconsistent. You know what I mean? The fight was there against Galway, and they're going to have to bring that for tomorrow for sure, but they're going to have to win a lot in football terms as well.
Kevin McStay's not been afraid to make the decisions. Obviously, your position, he made a change there. Jason Doherty last week coming in.
He did, yeah. He did make 3 or 4 changes, and obviously they named the team yesterday that, I don't think will start. I think the only surprise to me at this stage about Mayo naming a team if that was the team that actually started, Yeah.
All teams, Colm.
Yeah, I think it's just the case at this stage. And look, Dublin make a couple of changes as well. I think Sam Callan will definitely come in there for Mayo. I think Inda Hession is more likely to come in as well. So yeah, he hasn't been afraid to make the big changes for sure. But I think certainly leading into last week's game against Galway, there was a feeling that Mayo need to freshen things up a bit. We were gone a bit stale. Our team selection was gone, almost very predictable. Our style of play was very predictable. So I think going into the Galway game, we needed that bit of a mix-up. And then coming back now into Dublin tomorrow, obviously Manny Rowan is back into midfield. We certainly need his legs around the middle. Like I said, I think Inda Hession will come in. I think Sam Callan will come in. So there is that nice mix of what we're trying to do at the minute.
Dublin have been in a strange vein of form. Obviously, as a Division 2 team, they haven't been tested in the light of Division 1 teams. The only team they played was Roscommon, and they struggled against Roscommon's almost possession-based mass defence. And Kildare as well caused them a problem in the first game, not the second game. But how do Mayo unsettle Dublin to be competitive, say, at the hour mark tomorrow?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I was looking at this yesterday morning. I think the 4 games or the 4 or 5 games Dublin have won in the championship, it's been by a combined total of 70 points or something mad like that, which is unbelievable, really. I think from a Mayo point of view, I think all the talk about it has been about Dublin, how maybe they haven't been tested properly, how they're coming into this a small bit undercooked. I think Dublin are going to come flying out of the blocks tomorrow and really look to take Mayo on early. I think they'll be looking at Mayo last week. I think they'll be looking at our kickouts. I think they'll be looking at our backline and the bit of inexperience that's there of playing in a full house in Croke Park with Hill 16 behind you, the likes of Colm Boyle, Jack Coyne, David McBride, Sam Callan. These are 3 inexperienced players at the back. And I think they'll be looking at putting pressure on Mayo as early as possible. Like I said, getting out of the blocks early. And I think they really look to suffocate Mayo on their own kick-out, especially, and try and put that pressure on and see can they get that reward and maybe make Mayo chase the game early on and unsettle them. So for Mayo, you mentioned it there, it's just vital they stay in this game. Vital they stay in this game, John. We're going to have to be an awful lot better than we were last Sunday at our own kickouts. I think we only won 4 of our 13 kickouts in the first half. If that happens tomorrow, the game could be over, John, because Dublin, why, yes, they're not the team they once were. They still have that ability of, if they get a purple patch in the game, they could actually win a game in a 15-minute spell, and that's what Mayo certainly have to avoid early on tomorrow.
Does Cillian O'Connor need to play?
He won't start. I can't see a way in which he starts. He will be on the pitch in the last 20 minutes. The same as he was in Salt Hill last week. He just hasn't the physical work done, John, all year and played enough football. I don't think Jack McCaffrey will start either, I have to say. I think Jack McCaffrey will be left for the final 20 minutes. I think he's only started 2 championship games this year, played very little league football. He went off at half-time in the Leinster final or just before, and has only played 10 minutes since. So I don't think there's any way Jack McCaffrey plays tomorrow, or that there's 70 minutes in the legs. I'd be surprised. I think he'd be coming in the last 20, as will Cillian O'Connor. I think both benches look really, really strong, to be fair, and that's what it could come down to, a battle of the benches.
Are Mayo buoyed by the win from 2 years ago? Because remember, the last time they played the championship, they beat Dublin. Are they buoyed by that? Is that in the memory bank? Or does that happen for a player? Do you store any of that stuff up? Anything to get an edge?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things Mayo will be going after this week. If you're just looking at a belief point of view, you mentioned that game 2021. An awful lot of players there. You're probably 9, 10, 11 of them boys that play tomorrow. You like, so your Inda Hessians, Tommy Conroy's, Brian O'Donoghue's, Mario Owen, Stevie Cohen, Paddy Durkin's, these fellas. This fueled great belief with them that the last time we were there against these fellas, we won the game. So that'll generate the belief. You mentioned the games, going to Killarney, playing Kerry, the All-Ireland champions 6 weeks ago, winning that game. Going to Galway, your biggest rivals here in the West, of course, last week, winning that game. So you're just trying to generate belief in your team all the time, and going to Croke Park now is the next step for them. And they will fully believe, yes, this probably is a better Dublin team than they played 2 years ago. They probably have a few more boys back, but they are still there for the take. And I believe, I think they're still, why they, obviously Cluxton back, McCarthy back, Fitzsimons, these boys, they're still not the same players they were in 2018, 2019, and I think that's an important thing for Mayo to recognise as well when they're going up there tomorrow.
One player that they almost hung the losing of the All-Ireland to Kerry in the semi-final on last year for Dublin was Conor Callaghan. It was almost like he was the difference. But he's now fit and he's there, and that's a big thing for Dublin.
Oh, huge. Yeah, huge. And it'd be fascinating to see from a Mayo point of view, number one, where he plays. He's kind of been dipping in and out between centre forward and the full forward line. So it'd be really, really interesting to see from a Mayo point of view who actually picks him up. Like Sam Callan got the job. He's not named to start, but like I said, I think he will. He got the job of picking up Shane Welch last week. Could you go with Sam Callan? It's a huge ask for a guy that's still under 20 and played under 20 football this year for Mayo. Or do you go someone like, if he is in centre forward, yes, you put Paddy Durkin there, an experienced player who will have the physical capacity to deal with the likes of Conor Callan. Or if he's inside, maybe it's a job for David McBride. But there's no doubt about it, John, Dublin are a different animal with Conor Callan. He is just absolutely everything that goes through him. And if Mayo are going to win this game tomorrow, there's no doubt they are going to have to curtail him to a certain extent.
It's a fascinating matchup between Derry and Cork, isn't it? That Derry are Ulster champions. They don't use that many players. We know their style of play. I think Shane McGuigan has obviously helped them improve probably 12 months on. And then Cork are the one kind of wild card with momentum. As we know, they finish games well. They're physically strong. It's a hard one to call in a way.
and I don't think this is going to be as one-sided as people are thinking. You know, automatically people are edging towards Derry, and yes, why they probably should win the game. If you look at Cork, obviously Munster Championship was a disaster. They lose to Clare, but since that, they really have been on an upward trajectory. And obviously they beat Louth. They put in a really good performance against Kerry the second day out. Beat Mayo the third day out, which was a fully deserved victory. I think people mainly talked about Mayo after that, but Cork were the real story because they fully deserved it. When the game was there to be won, they absolutely went and won it. And again, last week against Roscommon, when the game was in the melting pot in the second half, again, it was them that went and won it. So they're absolutely there on merit. What'll be really interesting for me is, will they be as aggressive as they were against Roscommon on the Derry kickout? Because I think the Derry are so used to teams dropping off and conceding possession to them. And Derry are the one team that are so comfortable, John. If you just allow them easy possession, they will literally walk the ball up the pitch. They'll get into their attacking structure. They'll bring their 14-15 bodies up the pitch. And normally they'll get a shot away from there. But Cork were so aggressive on Roscommon's kick out last week and got huge joy in it, especially in the second half. I think they got 1-2 off it, which was basically the winning of the game for them. So I'd love to see them push up and go aggressive on Derry's kick out. And if you look at the Cork midfield in particular, Maguire and Colm Boyle, like really that has given them a huge platform over the last 2, 3, 4 games. And what a battle that could be with Conor Glass and Brendan Rodgers in the middle of the pitch. It's almost a throwback to what you'd see 20 years ago in the 90s with them type of midfielder. So I'd love to see long kickouts tomorrow from both sides and just them boys competing in the air together. But it'll be really, really interesting games, no doubt about it.
30 years on since they met in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, Colm, we're talking, I suppose, about a full house tomorrow at Croke Park for the first time this season. What's it like playing? How much does a crowd come into your almost your sphere of sight and feel when you're in centre back position and you're bombing forward, you're getting a point here, you're tackling back, you're defending, you goal mouth clearances? How much is that part of the whole experience for the uninitiated? Because we've no idea what it's like.
Oh, it's electric, John. It's just, it's something unfortunately you never experience in any other walk of life. Once you finish with it, you'll never get that experience back. It's just, I heard Keith Higgins talk about this during the week when Lee scored the goal at 17, and he said it actually felt like the ground was shaking in Croke Park because there was just pandemonium in the stands, and literally a game of football is still going on. The kick out is taken and there's still pandemonium going on, and that's just what it feels like. It's an incredible experience, and like I said, that's why for Mayo, the likes of Mayo tomorrow, the young players that haven't played in that experience before, that's why getting through the first 20 minutes is really, really important for the likes of them, because especially with the likes of Hill 16 behind you, it's something completely different. And I was thinking about this during the week. The first time I did it in 2012, like I was prepping in the weeks leading up to it, just from a mental point of view, even listening to Come On You Boys in Blue on YouTube clips just to get me into the focus of, feeling that experience or that atmosphere as much as possible. But it'll be a brilliant experience, and what a weekend. I've had such a drab kind of first couple of months of this championship job, but now full house in Croker in a quarter final. It'll be someday tomorrow for sure.
Mayo, just to finish, Colm, have to believe as a county that this is going to happen someday, and it's someday soon, because you can't really think any other way.
As in winning the All-Ireland?
Yes.
Yeah, look, at the thing about winning All-Ireland, John, it'll happen when it happens. It'll probably happen the least time we expect it to happen. You know what I mean? And who knows, that could be this year. But like for tomorrow, like the boys have a huge challenge tomorrow. I think they'll be under no illusions what's ahead of them tomorrow. I really think Dublin are looking at this as the last real go for a number of boys in this team, and maybe even the management team, Dessie Farrell as well, including that. I think he's into year 4 now at this stage. So I think Dublin bringing back the likes of Mannion, McCaffrey, and McCarthy, obviously Fitzsimon's pushing on, Dean Roth pushing on. I think they're looking at this as having real one massive tilt to winning the All-Ireland, because there might be a lot of this group again next year there. So, they have a huge challenge, Mayo, tomorrow to get over that. So if Mayo did get over that, would they fear anyone after that? It's the most wide open championship you're ever likely to see again, John. So who knows, it could be this year. If not, it could be in the next couple of years, John. But it'll happen, definitely. I can assure you that.
Are you? What's the ritual tomorrow then? Are you going to be staying in Mayo, or are you going to be in the car or on the train, or what are you going to be doing?
For the match?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll be there. I'll be there in the Hogan stand. Yeah, cheering on the boys. Really looking forward to it. I was actually thinking about this during the week. It's my first time there as a supporter since 2006, since Mayo played Dublin in the semi-final 2006. So my first time experiencing that atmosphere from the stands for, gosh, Jesus, 17 years now. It feels like a lifetime ago. So really, really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Colm, have a great day, whatever happens, and brilliant insight as always. Thanks for speaking to us on Saturday.
Thanks, million, John.